Hey everyone, let's just give a couple more minutes as we see people trickling in, but we're excited to kick off the webinar with you. Starting to see some folks pop on. That's exciting. We'll kick off at 1 or 2 after. I know after lunchtime on the West Coast, people are starting to roll back in. All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to our Women in MarTech webinar. Perfectly fitting for International Women's Month. Excited to have everybody here. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. The audience is automatically muted during the webinar. We are recording the webinar and we will share that out after the event. If you want to submit any questions, you can go ahead and do that using the Q&A feature within the Zoom. And finally, if you want to use the chat for comments, make sure that it's set to everyone and not host and panelists, and you'll see what that looks like down here. All right, I'll introduce myself first. I am Michelle Lerner. I will be the moderator for the panel today. I oversee business development at Branch. I've been at Branch for almost 4 years. I actually started my career in direct mail, remember that, and on the customer success side, and then moved over into tech about 10, 11 years ago. And then finally moved over from customer success into partnerships and found my home at Branch. I am beyond thrilled to be joined by 4 of the smartest, most incredible women in the industry today. So we'll go through and have everyone introduce themselves. Shannon, let's start with you.
Thank you, Michelle. So happy to be here with such a rock star panel of women off the heels of International Women's Day yesterday, of course. But every day is International Women's Day, especially when I get to celebrate with all of these awesome women on the panel. So happy to have you all here. My name is Shannon Cook. I work at Moveable Ink and I'm the director of new channel activation. I'll give a little background quickly on Moveable Ink for those who might not be familiar. So Moveable Ink is the content generation solution to all of the floating different pieces around your MarTech stack. And there's so many areas of focus when it comes to that stack, whether it's orchestration, attribution, analytics, and many of those pieces are neglecting a key critical point to that message, and that's the content. So Moveable Ink helps to solve that content bottleneck for marketers by automatically generating the most relevant content for each customer at every touch point, at every channel. And that's what I focus on at Moveable Ink. I focus on activating, enabling our go-to-market teams around new channel activation, specifically mobile messaging. So a little bit of background on me. Michelle, I also started my career working on direct mail. So look at that, way back. In agency account management is where I started. And I worked across print mail, email, digital. And when I wanted to make my next move, I wanted to get a bit more tailored. So I started to focus on email marketing, and that's where I found Moveable Ink. I was very passionate about staying in client services. I was also on the client services side, and I moved around CS roles for some time. I joked with our sales team, I was always a little sales leaning, but never wanted to make the jump because I loved working with our clients so much. But I loved the thought and the notion of hunting for new opportunities and creating magic out of a small seed. So when this role came to fruition, focusing on go-to-market enablement for new channels, new initiatives, new priorities, specifically our expansion into the mobile app marketing space, because we have been email only one channel for so long, It was a beautiful marriage of skills and what I was seeking for. So like I mentioned, I work across sales, CX, and leadership, everyone in between, to own mobile marketing efforts, at education and activation across the board. So happy to be here. So happy to be with the rest of the crew here.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. We're super pumped to have you here. I'll kick it off to Maria to introduce herself next.
Thanks, Michelle. Again, yeah, super excited to be here. We have a great group of women and looking forward to our little discussion today. I'm Maria Lannon. I am VP of Account Management at Remerge. I've been here for about 3 years now, and I lead a customer-facing team at the organization. So for those not familiar with Remerge, we are a demand-side platform. We help mobile marketers drive scalable app growth through programmatic in-app advertising, primarily specializing in app retargeting, but we've since expanded our solution to offer privacy compliant user acquisition as well. Kind of best known in the market for our incrementality measurement tool, which allows a lot of our clients to measure the effectiveness of their marketing campaigns. So that's kind of how we fit into the overall MarTech and ad tech space.
Awesome. How about Lindy? Let's hear about you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is great. I wish we were all in person because I think this group would have a lot more to talk about, that maybe you all could join us in a future in-person event. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm working for mParticle, leading our marketing organization over here. My career has always been in demand gen, but specifically here at mParticle, what drew me here is that really what we're trying to anchor on is making sure that marketers, like the folks listening to this call, folks in this on this panel, have an ability to trust their data, right? There's a never-ending source of data chaos that's coming at us with first-party data. Of course, the third-party data is going to continue to kind of fade away into the distance, but it's not going to get any easier, right? And so mParticle is here to be that infrastructure layer for large companies, commercial companies, to better understand and trust that data to really create those personalized experiences, which consumers are going to continue to look for the rest of our existence, right? But a little bit about me, my background. Like I said, I've been in demand gen for most of my career, but I kind of live a dual life of technology companies as well as I live on a little farm. And so my background has always been, how do I scale the experience of sales? And I think that that's something we'll get into later. I've been very fortunate to work with some really great sales leaders and marketing leaders, find some really great mentors. But my passion is really taking the experience that you would have with a customer in person and scaling that through all of our digital channels, our events. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but I'll hand the mic off.
That's great. Thanks, Lindy. Maybe we'll have to have a follow-up webinar just about your farm because I'm very intrigued.
More the merrier.
Awesome. That leaves us with Lucy. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Nice to be here with all these other ladies. Unfortunately, I'm not on a farm. I am in the city of San Francisco. But good to meet you all. I'm currently the Senior Director of ATS Channel Partnerships, and ATS stands for our Authenticated Traffic Solution, which I can get into. I am freshly new to LiveRamp. In fact, tomorrow is 2 months to the day, started just in January. So I've been very excited about this new role. It's on the BD publisher side of the business. And to give you guys a little bit of a background on LiveRamp, for those of you who don't know what it is, LiveRamp is very different from a lot of the other companies represented here today, in that we are the leading enablement platform for safe and effective data. And so essentially what it is our identity capabilities allow brands, publishers, as well as agencies to activate and connect and control their data across the entire MarTech digital advertising ecosystem. And so what that means is that it allows for obviously greater business outcomes for the businesses, but also a better user experience for each of the users. And so when you think about where we fit into this MarTech stack, we are essentially the pipes. So we are not a DSP, we are not an SSP. We are just solely allowing these businesses to safely and effectively channel their data wherever they need to go within the ecosystem. To give you a little background on my journey, I have been in the ad tech space and MarTech space since I started. I originally was working for a small email marketing startup on the advertiser account management, demand side. And then through an acquisition, became part of a larger global display network still working on the demand side. And then, you know, I was fortunate enough to be able to try all the different channels throughout my journey here in the MarTech space. And so, not to date myself, but while I was at that company, that's when mobile advertising really started to come about, right? We were getting rid of our flip phones and we were starting to see ads on, you know, Android and iOS. And so at that point, I started to launch the mobile channel for that company and loved it. But it was, you know, as you can imagine, the wild, wild west. It was very different than any of the other channels at the time. Obviously, companies like Branch are around because of that. And so, you know, it was really exciting for me, but I decided that I wanted to specialize specifically in mobile. So then I spent a few years at a mobile specific company, account management side, and then shifted into, similar to Michelle and Shannon, shifted into BD and publisher side, working at a cross-channel marketing company for a few years prior to LiveRamp.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. It's so fun to hear how everyone got to where they are today. We have just one more thing I want to cover before we kind of jump into the content of it. You heard a little bit about how each of these technologies work on their own, but I wanted to take some time to actually showcase how all of our tech works together. So you can see here, this circle is really the customer experience journey. You have Remerge and Moveable Ink on the top side that actually own channel activation and personalization. Branch here is then that mobile linking platform, and we provide the user experience and measurement of these campaigns. Then you'll see the data is sent over to mParticle, who then manages the data quality and drives better customer interactions. And then LiveRamp, which handles the data enablement to fuel those campaigns. So you'll really see that it's a cyclical journey of customer experience, personalization, and unified measurement. And seeing this kind of come to fruition is really how you can see why we partner so well together. And together we provide this best-in-class mobile marketing technology. So with that, let's dive into our questions. So first, let's hear from Lucy. Would love to hear what you think are some best practices that you've seen in your career, maybe some advice for those who want to transition over to B2B tech marketing.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my intro, you know, I've been in the ad tech space for quite some time, that I have been fortunate enough to really pivot between various channels within the space, as well as within, you know, supply and demand side. And so I think there's some things that we really need to understand about this industry. I think one of the qualifications or characteristics that you really have to do is you have to be adaptable. You know, this MarTech space is ever evolving, it's ever changing, and it's happening very quickly. And so you need to really be able to take anything that comes your way and pivot as needed. And along the same lines, you know, be strategic and innovative. I feel like I've found myself, you know, more times than not, having to think outside of the box for a solution that is a problem that, you know, we really haven't ever faced before. And so I think that that's something that is critical. Also, I think we'll dive into this later in the panel, but creating a network is absolutely imperative for the MarTech space. We are small, but we are mighty, and people are really willing to help and wanting to connect. And, you know, when I first got started, I was attending as many networking events as possible. You know, find yourself a mentor, reach out to people on LinkedIn and just kind of, you know, say, hey, you look interesting, would love to schedule time for a coffee. I think that you'll find that people are really willing to do that. And also, you know, find people with like mutual respect at your various companies along your journey, and carry those relationships with you from role to role, company to company, and also with your network, make it all different levels of seniority. I find that some, you know, it's really valuable to have not only peers, but, you know, people that have been previous managers, bosses, et cetera, to have that network. And then one final thing I would say is around something that's important for the MarTech industry is around self-education. So MarTech, as I had mentioned, it continues to evolve, it's fast paced, and so things are changing. So keep up with daily news, acquisitions, regulations, whatever it might be, because that will affect the landscape, but also, you know, your role. And I think this is an industry that, not only you have to keep up with the industry news and events, but also, for career growth, it really requires being proficient in many different skill sets. And so you really need to sort of stay sharp with what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said about networking. And it's funny, we were chatting, me and the panelists before we started recording, and we realized that this is the second, if not third time that all of us have actually done these type of like webinars and podcasts and stuff together. So finding kind of your crew within the industry is super important because it'll continue to carry you far for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Shannon, would love to hear any advice you have for 20-year-old Shannon on how to become a woman leader.
Oh boy, how much time do we have? There are so many pieces of advice or nuggets of wisdom that I could share, but I do think that it's helpful to note that 20-year-old Shannon likely needed to go through some of the things, whether or not they, made her feel uncomfortable or made her feel, smaller in the room. All of these were learning experiences. But reflecting on this question, I will boil it down to this. What I would tell myself, 20-year-old Shannon, is to lean on what makes you, what makes you strong, that stereotypically may be written off or may be looked at as weakness. And what I mean by that is if we take something like passion or resilience, leading with passion, with drive, with fire is certainly not a weakness across MarTech. Lucy touched on it a little bit. You have to be driven, you have to be motivated, you have to be adaptable. All of these things are celebrated in the MarTech space and are typically values for a lot of these companies. I know at Moveable Ink, we value grit. That's one of our 3 core values. And for me, as someone who certainly defines herself throughout the board, whether it was early or now in my career, I'm a very gritty, resilient person, but I define and display grit by making emotional connections, developing relationships, being incredibly driven, maybe sometimes a little hard-headedly driven for my clients to drive results, seeing big picture vision, and most certainly not being afraid to ask questions and challenge the status quo. And that last piece, particularly of asking questions, being curious, not being afraid to raise my hand or not being afraid to object. I was so nervous early on in my career that curiosity was going to come off as I was a challenge, or on the other side of the spectrum, I was ignorant and I didn't know what I was talking about. And I've even had past experiences at past companies throughout my career where I was criticized for talking too much and, asking too many questions and, circling the drain with people we're never going to get to the end goal. Now, I'm not an indecisive person, and I ask these questions with reason, but I like to think of these things and problems and struggles from all different angles so I can align back to that big picture vision. And that's how I work. So early on, 20-year-old Shannon would have taken a criticism like that and then completely, clamp down what made me me. So if I had to talk back to myself, I would say your emotional intelligence, your relationship building, your thoroughness, your ability to speak up for yourself, these are not weaknesses. These are not red flags. These are strengths, and showcase that, 10 plus years from now, you are going to be a capable leader. So don't close that off from people.
I love that. Finding and harnessing your superpower. Like
100%.
that's all we need to do. Amazing. Lindy, I'm curious, do you have a mentor and how did you go about finding one?
There's a couple. Let me just kind of back up a little bit. So, I think my journey has been a little unconventional because I've always kind of been on the nerdy data analytics side of marketing, demand, operations, that sort of world. And in that space, surprisingly enough, there wasn't a lot of women. And so one of the things that I had to actively do, as we've mentioned already, is go out and network. Like I had to put myself into situations where I could meet people outside of just the couple folks I worked with. And a lot of times it was just me. I was everything. I wore all the hats in the marketing org. Or I was entering into a big company where their particular role wasn't built, right? There was nobody who told you how to do it. You had to figure it out.
Right.
And I think in those cases, like you lean on people across the company, you find confidants. But when it came down to specific mentors, I remember when I was at Accolade, there was a woman there, Pam Suplow, which if you ever find her on LinkedIn, definitely do. She was the head of HR. And I leaned down to her and I said, let's talk often. Let's get some. And she's like, and I remember my boss telling me that she's like, you can't ask the head of HR to be your mentor. I'm like, why not? Why not? Well, it turned out to be a really smart move because as we both moved on in our careers, she's been a great champion. She's been a great sounding board. Also, working at Tableau, like our CMO, Lisa Fink, was phenomenal. Like she was just a really strong female leader, as well as Kelly Wright, who ran sales there. And so I'd reach out to them with specific questions and you would find that they open up pretty quickly. They give you the time. And so sometimes organically mentors show up in your life, right? And there's other times where you have to go like to events and start getting your name out there and meeting folks. Like I met Shauna Causey way back in the day. We did Tech Mavens for a bit together to just kind of highlight women entrepreneurs, just as a fun project. Nobody was getting paid. We were just doing it for fun.
Yeah.
So I think you go out and seek people. Sometimes it happens organically. But I also currently at mParticle, like this is the first time in my career where every leader across the company, regardless of level, will give you their ear, will hear you if you have passion, if you're having a rough day, if you're having something to celebrate. And I'll speak to some of the women leaders we have over here, like Karen Galantry, she's fantastic. And like, there's days where she's like, today, we're just going to finish out today, or we celebrate the big milestones. Right. And I think that those are now values that I can take into my own leadership style. And when people raise their hand to be like, hey, I need your ear, I'd be like, great. I may not be an official mentor to that person, but then I can start to use that value, that modeling that I've seen over time, and give them the benefit of that. Yeah. So my advice, if you're looking for a mentor, I think I'll echo what has already been said, like reach out, put yourself out there, and then find organically throughout the company people that will, give you their ear, but also reciprocate that. Practice being a great listener, modeling what you want out of a mentor. One of the things I also recommend, put it in your phone, make it super easy, pull up a notepad and put specifically in this notepad what you want out of a mentor relationship. Do you want someone to listen to you? Do you want solutions? Do you want help with a promotion? Do you want guidance on how to go about a really difficult challenge in your company? Like make yourself a list because some people will fit that bill differently. You might need 10 mentors, you might need one, right?
Yeah.
And people will fit in your life, kind of like shoes, different periods of your life for different reasons. So I think there's kind of a both directions, but currently, I think I've got 4 really good mentors, both male and female. But, when I was at Stripe, like Vicki Lynn's kind of a ninja throughout, really well known at Stripe. She's just a kind of an ear for everyone and really brilliant. So you will find people within your company. Don't hesitate, like we said, to reach out and say, hey, I would like to have your ear, and make yourself a list of the values you want to accomplish with folks.
Yeah, that's really, really great advice. It kind of goes with the theme of like going after what you want and, asking those questions, and, you'll find that there are some folks that kind of rise to the top and you'll be able to lean on them.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Maria, let's have some advice, tips, tricks. Obviously, our industry is very male dominated. So would love to hear from you. Like, how can women succeed in this male dominated industry like ours?
This is a great question. So I host our Women in Mobile podcast at Remerge, and we actually started it a year ago. And it was only supposed to be like a month long, and we do it monthly now. It's really great, get to connect with a lot of women in our industry. And this is a question that comes up constantly, or just in our discussion, is how do you have a voice when you are a woman or you are the minority? And I think the biggest thing, it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about in building a network and finding allies, even with our male colleagues. So while we can have great women mentors, I've had some really fabulous mentors that have been male, former managers or whatever that might be. And I think, if we have those allies, it should allow you to feel more comfortable to speak up in situations. And a lot of times, we might hesitate because we might be the only woman in the room, but we need that perspective and we need to have that voice. And I think it's incredible to see how the landscape has changed in the past few years, where we are seeing a larger presence of women. I mean, looking at this panel, obviously it is for Women's History Month, but I mean, we need more of these types of events and things like that. And I think the more that you can hear from women like us or anybody else, or have a female mentor, the more you can learn and the more you can apply what you're learning, and have that confidence to speak up. But I think, let's not say that, the mentors that you need to find need to be female. Let's find those male mentors. They will lift you up. And it goes back to what Lucy even said in the beginning. It's like, reach out and ask for help. People want to help and they will help you. And if they don't want to help you, then they're the wrong person. And, you will find somebody else. But I think generally, no one is going to ignore someone that reaches out to them for advice or help or whatever that might be. And I think, a part of that is just owning it and reaching out to men, even women, in this industry, to kind of have that voice and build that voice.
Absolutely. And just knowing that, you deserve to be here as a woman. I think when you and I spoke on the podcast together, it was all about imposter syndrome. And it's just reminding women to have a voice and know that they have a seat at the table for a reason. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing all that insight, ladies. I want to kind of talk now about some hot topics in the mobile industry. The first one, so Google obviously has this new privacy sandbox for Android. I'm sure everyone's heard. And also the ongoing and ever increasing privacy measures with iOS. Would love to know, Maria, how are your product teams responding? And does this really impact the strategy that your customers are doing in any way?
Sure. So I think for us at Remerge, privacy has kind of been fundamental to what we've been doing, and how we kind of optimize, and it kind of aligns with our overall strategy. So, we're committed to kind of helping advertisers continue to drive scalable app growth in this privacy era that we are in. I keep saying like privacy of the future, and it's like, no, it's here. We are here. But because of that, we have over time been developing two solutions that kind of would run independent of device IDs or any sort of identifier. So the first is just a newer approach and an innovative approach to user acquisition. So that would be based off of like more contextually based targeting and optimization. Instead of, when we're thinking about traditional user acquisition, leveraging device IDs, lookalike models. So none of that like privacy invasive technique. So this is like one solution that we've kind of been focusing on, and primarily Remerge, we have been focused on retargeting, but a lot of that landscape will change as the two kind of forge into one. So that's kind of one way that our product team is thinking about things is, okay, how can we be innovative in the way that we think about acquiring users in-app? And then another is, we're fully integrated with SCAD network, but of course it definitely has shortcomings. And this is something we hear a lot from our advertisers currently. It's like, how do I measure? I'm not seeing the performance that I was seeing before. And so with that, we've also expanded our incrementality solution to be able to run campaigns on non-ID traffic and actually measure lift on non-ID traffic. So at a time where users are being stripped of data, this becomes really invaluable to kind of make effective buying decisions, especially when, using something like SCAD Network, a lot of that information is delayed, where this could be a little bit more or as close to real time as we kind of see it today when it comes to measurement. So I think, for us, it's like, there's a lot to learn and prepare for, but, we are excited to kind of apply the strengths that we've been, bringing to market for quite some time now, and just kind of change the way that we think about our solutions and the way that advertisers leverage them. So, that doesn't mean that everything suddenly goes away. And I think that was the first perception when all of this rolled out. It's like, oh my God, like they're just, these IDs, they're going to disappear and everything, is going to change. But that didn't necessarily happen overnight. And we can see that today, specifically on iOS, where, we still see about like 50% of IDs still available, which means, you can still leverage that data. It's not
Mhm.
completely gone. And I think, with Android and the Google Privacy Sandbox, it definitely a little bit different where it's going to be more audience-based targeting. And, we'll update our platform to allow for that. But I think the biggest thing for us is like, okay, how do we develop new solutions that customers can test? And a lot of our customers, I think right now, the way that they're responding is they're open to testing and trying different things. And, the faster that you can bring that to market and actually see a fit for the future and where we will be and where things are going, it's definitely a daunting time, but I think, customers are open to it and they want to hear about, different ways that they can test and, apply, different techniques to the way that they might traditionally think about like measurement and advertising in general.
Yeah, definitely. I think you were right with like the reaction of like, oh my God, all of this is happening. But in reality, when the dust settles, it's nice to see that like we can still find opportunity in this change.
Yeah. It's not just, it hasn't just disappeared.
Right. Totally. So Shannon, with the growing focus of personalization of app experiences, obviously Moveable Ink specializing in this, how do you feel about the privacy initiatives overall and the approach of both Android and on iOS?
So what's interesting is when Maria was explaining and kind of, calling out how, we thought one thing, we thought it was going to be this, big catastrophic event. And sure, to some level, it was catastrophic in the event that it changed what we were doing. But our VP of strategy at Moveable Ink said something that stuck with me once. This is an opportunity masked in a crisis, right? For us to think in a different way. And, when I think about, and to set the stage, Moveable Ink is coming at this in a slightly different way, being that we operate in owned channels. So we operate across email and mobile messaging, so push and in-app and these experiences that are owned by the marketer. So we live in slightly a different world, but iOS 15 rocked us a little bit too, being that our value prop for such a long time was this real-time content. So now we're up against iOS 15. We're learning that content's going to be cached, that we're not going to be able to see who's opening. And, we had to pivot in that way, but it ended up that once the dust settled, we realized that we were up against something much more scalable, much more attainable. But again, such an opportunity for us to really cement home why customers use Moveable Ink, but what customers are looking for in general when they download an app, when they open up an email, when they experience their favorite brands. So one of the angles of the privacy initiatives that are rolling out across iOS and Android is this overall fear that we are just going to lose sight completely on valuable data. And we use that data to tailor content recommendations, to tailor advertising, to tailor this experience. So the way I think about it is it's the seesaw effect. If you opt out and you want to maintain your privacy, you're going to receive stale, outdated, irrelevant content. And that again is going to cause customer friction. It's going to cause a poor experience. And if you opt in, meaning that you're okay with these brands tracking your behavior, or, you don't opt into the mail privacy protection, you have that chance for brands to make that connection and make that relationship with you so they can personalize your experience to your wants and needs. But you might arguably sacrifice some of that privacy and that anonymous nature, which again is a growing importance to customers. I want to share a fact with you all that I read and I found very pleasantly surprising. So Gartner just released their marketing predictions for this year, and they are stating, they're making the claim that by 2023, the opt-out rate for mobile app tracking is predicted to decline from 85% to 60%, because consumers are going to learn that untargeted ads increase their exposure to low quality content. So I hear that and I get very excited because I work at Moveable Ink naturally, but also it showcases that this growing world of mobile app personalization, mobile marketing still has a chance to thrive. It has a huge chance to thrive because consumer privacy setting behavior is being influenced by the experiences that brands are providing. And now there's a potential for customers to accept all that tracking, but only from trusted brands. So again, it's kind of back to that seesaw, you know, opt-in rates are expected to decline, but it's ultimately up to the brand in their power to make sure that that opt-out doesn't happen. And how are you going to do that? By creating trust. So in one way, that's great. Opt-out rates, you know, are going to continue to decrease, but we don't have to wait until 2023. Another angle to take here around the privacy initiatives is that your data being tracked across these apps is not the only way to provide personalization. Brands have so much first-party data, even zero-party data from other tech platforms in their stack, whether it's their ESP, their mobile service provider, their CDP. Give me an acronym, right? In the MarTech stack, like you have data in there. And using this data and, you know, simplifying and synthesizing all of your channels together is a great, strong suggestion, recommendation to personalize your app experiences, your messaging campaigns, especially if you do it all together in all channels, because your customers aren't thinking, oh, okay, I saw this in an email, but I didn't see this and that, and I'm going to my push notification. Like, they're not thinking about it. It's one consistent experience. But what they will notice is that if any of those are lacking, you're going to start losing trust. So utilizing first-party data, and that can be anything that's given to us by customers in some sort of direct way, you know, zero parting, meaning I'm telling you that I want to, you know, see content about women's jeans, or you can infer that from purchase behavior, preferences set, demographic information. All of this can be used in effective, smart ways through segmentation, through content generation. And that's where I get to, you know, how Moveable Ink fits in, right? So content personalization, as I mentioned in my intro, is way overlooked across the board as part of a messaging experience, because we're a marketer, we get to our desk and we think, I got to send this to the right people. I've got to make sure it's hitting the right channels. I have to get my reporting correct. All of the nuts and bolts are there, but customers don't remember any of that. They remember the content. We are very visual people. So if your content is lacking in any sort of way, you can do all of the right things in the world. So Moveable Ink, we're activating the data first party throughout your sources to supercharge that experience. So all that to being said, the privacy initiatives, like I mentioned, opportunity masked in a crisis. Now, whether you're at Moveable Ink, you're with a brand working with us, or anyone on this call, right? There are things we can do now to combat this because we have all this additional data at our disposal. And hopefully those opt-in rates continue to increase like Gartner predicts, but there's already things that we can do now to make sure we balance out that seesaw, and we're, you know, creating customers or treating customers, excuse me, with respect based on their privacy, but still servicing up content that they want to see and that's going to make them convert.
Yeah, that's huge. Like, I've been saying this, and this is going to date me, but people hated pop-up ads. Like, why did people hate pop-up ads? Because they weren't relevant to you.
100%.
And it's the same type of thing with this, you know, with this experience, is when it's not personalized or when it's a bad user experience, people know and people will complain about it.
Exactly what I say about push notifications. I'm sure everybody here in the mobile space has heard that, maybe from a brand, or maybe that's unique to me. Anyone on the line maybe has heard that. But, oh, I don't want to use push notifications because push notifications are intrusive. There's a reason why they're intrusive, but you don't have to make them intrusive if you think about it from a data-backed way. So whether it's pop-up ads, or we're thinking about it in these newer mediums that are continuing to emerge, it's the same thing. Personalization is what's going to make them click, what's going to make them work. Absolutely.
What about the impact of ad spend on like dominant platforms on iOS and Android's Lindy? What do you think? And how does this impact organic and unpaid campaigns as well?
That's a big question. Okay, so I've got a couple different answers here, but I'll kind of run with this one. Like, we're on like a never-ending treadmill to keep up with all the changes, right? It's not gonna stop. And I think, you know, back to the advice of growing up in this industry, you have to be really adaptable. You know, a couple of things I've heard from our customers is they're thinking a little bit differently, and it's outside of just the marketing work, where now there's a movement towards, like, even for the smaller companies, like the more entrepreneurial, is like, they're thinking of like, how mature is our company for our customer data? And sometimes they're like, we can send emails out. What else can we do? We can do push notifications. We can do a few ads. Like, they're starting to realize this is not just a marketing thing. This is not just an advertising on a particular platform situation. This is a mentality that goes across the company, and it creates a bit of a transformation. And we've seen our very large companies, customers going on this, and the smaller as well as down to the startups. They're all kind of going through this transformation. And what's going to make the difference, regardless of the platform they want to advertise on necessarily, is if they have a mindset of taking folks on a journey, building that trust. Like, like Shannon was saying, like push notifications aren't intrusive if it's something people want, right? And if it's something that is actually helpful and useful for them. And I think, the pandemic helped accelerate that a bit. But what it is really forcing companies to understand that this data chaos is like, it's real, it's coming, it's going to be more and more complex, more tools. Like we are a sea of 5-ish products, but there's thousands of MarTech tools. And that now goes into the product experience that's outside of marketing advertising. That also goes into their hiring. What kind of skill gaps do they have to be able to think about these platforms natively? Do they have experts that think about experience on particular devices and channels? So it is a big data transformation that we're kind of in the middle of. And on the organic side, what folks have told me and our customers is that they're just not seeing the engagement. And I think that that's a switch too, is that folks are starting to have metrics on not just conversions, but also engagement. Like they're starting to measure their marketing spend that way, especially like our big media folks. Like they're looking at engagement metrics, which I think is something new that marketers have thought about in the past as something we liked, but now it's a company-wide visual. And so that's a different mentality to create journeys, less transactional, but it continues to reinforce how important it is to have audiences to really better understand the customer, get that feedback loop coming through and getting that information out to the whole company. It's not just a marketing problem anymore. It's not just a channel problem.
Definitely.
So I hope that kind of answers your question, but I do think that we're on a roller coaster and we're kind of in the center of it. And we're also well positioned to help the brands who are listening and beyond navigate this crazy data chaos. It's not going to stop.
Totally. Data chaos is probably my favorite word that you've introduced me to.
Well, you can have it. Take it forth with you.
It's
Yes.
so great. I would love to hear from you and also Lucy around like with this like lack of access to log level data and unique identifiers, like what are some creative uses for avoiding this data chaos and things like addressability?
Lucy, you want to take the first?
Yeah, sure. I'll
jump on
take
that?
a stab on that. Sure. Yeah, I
Okay.
love the term data chaos as well. So thanks for introing that to all of us. But
Adopted.
when you think about, the future of data within the digital advertising space, it really, the way that we see it at LiveRamp is that it is, the ecosystem is really, it's going to need to be addressable and it's going to need to be authenticated. And so it's essentially why LiveRamp has created our authenticated traffic solution, which is the team that I am on. And so ATS, really what it does is it provides a privacy first PII authenticated solution, which creates these addressable audiences without any third-party cookies or mobile identifiers. So exactly what you were talking about, Lindy, in terms of these audiences. And it enables reach and measurement on an encrypted people-based identifier. So it's completely privacy safe in that sense. And ATS was really built, interestingly enough, without cookies in mind. And so it is truly addressable first. And we've obviously, this has been in the market, we've been testing and running it, and we've seen performance results for ATS that are higher than the third-party cookies. So it's something that absolutely, in terms of keeping the data chaos in check, is what we are looking at as the future for MarTech.
I'll jump in with one creative idea, and this is a bit of an older story, but Burger King's detour story. And I thought this was pretty clever, is that they actually used geofencing, to interact with folks. Like, I think that's pretty clever. And so you get the trust to get the app downloaded, you get the trust to enable notifications, and then you build these kind of creative experiences with the people who've opted in. And you're creating this kind of exclusive feel, right? You're creating this feeling where, oh, I'm kind of special. I get offered a free Whopper because I started to drive towards McDonald's. Like, so creating those experiences where you're bringing people through the journey, you're earning each, kind of step in their mind space. I think has been really clever to hear from our customers. We also have another customer who's considering looking at license plates as part of their identifier, which mParticle can pull that in and help enrich that into their user profile, which is pretty slick, right? so that you would drive up to the drive-thru and the menu would change for you. So I think that there's some creative things. And like we've also heard from customers who use credit cards if they don't have full user profiles on that, and that creates another identifier, which has been really neat to hear all the different use cases. Especially we also have customers who are moving from a digital world, now creating a brick and mortar, going the other direction, right? And how they are building up the trust to do push notifications, or they're doing direct mail pieces to people, kind of adding in some extra exclusivity, some fun to this. Also keeping in part of their portfolio, of course, passive ads, pulling them to the next stage of the journey, then asking for a transaction. I think that that's a different mentality than we've had in the past of like, instead of ads just running to a transaction, it's like, hey, we're going to woo you, we're going to earn your trust, we're going to show that we understand your needs, we're going to prove to you that we can meet those needs, and then we're going to meet them and fulfill over and beyond your expectations. And so I think brands that are shining right now are really thinking about kind of the extra experiences they can add on. They're a bit more creative.
Definitely. Shannon, I know you have your thumb on the pulse of your customers. I'd love to know if there's any campaigns that maybe took you by surprise that they use creative use of data.
Yeah, I mean, Lindy, keep me posted on that license plate personalization.
Okay, let's do
An
it.
interesting idea. And so smart because again, it's back to that first party data. Like we have this, right? Let's use it in a smart way. One, you know, I could have given you like 80 million different campaigns for this because I'm always just so enamored by the ways that Moveable Ink customers, but just, you know, brands in my inbox or brands that I subscribe and have opted into for push notifications, you know, because once again, I say to folks that I work with all the time, we are consumers first, and then we work at Moveable Ink, right? So the best ideas are going to come from what's going to make us opt in, convert, click. But you know, I really love what NBC Peacock has done using Moveable Ink, using
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story, and Braze together to create this incredibly hyper-personalized experience for customers using a mix of aggregate and customer specific behavior. And, you know, taking this campaign, you know, initiative, creative from a goal and from a just clear-cut objective that they had. You know, Peacock was launched during the streaming wars, and they had pretty aggressive goals to keep up with all of these other players in the space. And what we've learned, what we've talked about is you got to build trust, you got to build personalization right off the bat, or you're going to lose that customer. So Peacock needed this customer engagement strategy built for every customer lifecycle. So what they were able to do in this campaign, you know, first couple days following sign up, they receive an email. It's an onboarding flow. So a journey that we set up, you know, day in, day out for brands. And it had the most popular content across subscribers. So a little bit of social proof, like what are your peers watching, you know, what's out there, what's trending, but it was also mixed with genre specific content based on your first title that you watched. So Michelle, if you're in there, you're watching dramas, we're going to recommend you know, the right content to show. If I literally just downloaded Peacock to watch Real Housewives Ultimate Girl Trip, that's a real story. I'm going to send more Bravo content and more of these reality shows to keep me active, to keep, you know, churn down across the board. And on the other end of that life cycle, if we are at a risk of churn, Peacock sends this win back campaign after 30 days of inactivity or so. And they're delivering messages personalized to that recommendation engine. So what they're doing is they're using their MarTech incredibly intelligently, using internal APIs they have, you know, using data that comes from mParticle. Braze is the orchestration, and Moveable Ink is the content that gets you there. And what I love about campaigns like this is all the data is there, all of the creative is lock and key, but there was results from this as well, right? And it showed value upstream. So this campaign lifted viewership activity by 10%. The win back campaign boosted renewals by 18%. And what I'm excited about is we're not going to be thinking about this in a channel siloed way. So now Peacock is thinking about, well, we've got a lot of folks that are streaming on the app. How do we bring this content into an onboarding flow for push notifications? So that's something that we're currently working on. But I love the campaign. I love that it's an mParticle one as well. It's such a great story. And it comes from this notion that we have data, we can use it, and we can use data in a way to combat churn, get to our goals that we're looking for to keep up in this aggressive market.
It seems so straightforward too.
Yeah.
Right? Great. They sent
Those
a
are the
couple
best
emails.
campaigns. Those are the
Right?
best campaigns. Like, great,
But like
duh, we should be doing this.
But underneath the hood, you're kind of looking at like a very sophisticated engine where
100%.
every step of the way, the data had to be trusted.
Yeah.
Because if they messed it up, one of those steps, like the win back campaign, and someone's like, I just downloaded it. Like that would be really wonky and probably just, jarring to a customer. But that's the underlying engine, is that they've been able to trust it. And I think that really gives confidence to those marketers, to those product folks, the engineers who are like, okay, we've got opt-ins, we know the data is enriched, we know it's the right people, okay, go, right? And I think that's continuing going to be a challenge. That's great to see Peacock like feeling they can do that. And huge audiences. These are not small audiences with Peacock. These are gigantic. So
we know everybody is watching Ultimate Girls Trip, so
100%.
it's a big audience.
Not everyone's watching Curious George. I mean, come on. You don't have 3 kids at
Listen,
home.
season two of Girls Trip is in the Berkshires where I live. So
Perfect.
yeah.
You're
Pretty
already
excited
on
for
it.
Peacock.
Love it. I love hearing about things that we've seen in the past, that I want to take a quick minute to think about the future. We're a fourth of the way almost through the year, but like, what do you think, Maria, is in store for 2022 and trend wise in the MarTech industry? Like, what do we have to look forward to?
I think one of the biggest things would be, despite the fact that we're moving into this like privacy era, but I think personalization becomes so much more important. And that's something that, I kind of see as being a focus as we head into 2022 and 2023 and beyond. I think, that data exchange becomes so much like more valuable. And that's where I see things going. So, personalization becomes that much more important because, again, you might have only one shot to get in front of a customer, and it needs to be relevant to them, kind of to what Shannon was speaking towards. So I see a shift there. And then, just thinking about the whole landscape in general, having first party data, super important right now. We've seen a lot of M&A in the market. I think that will definitely continue. We know that a lot of companies are trying to like close their ecosystems and kind of build their own tech stack. And I also see that kind of continuing and becoming even larger this year.
Awesome. What do you think, Lucy? What are some trends we can see this year?
Yeah, I'm with you, Maria, especially on the first party side of things. Absolutely. Again, we're going to see, an increase in addressability and being able to identify users across the ecosystem, all the different channels. I also think I love this question because I think there are so many endless trends and things that we can predict. I agree as well with the mergers and acquisitions there. I think, though, one of the things that we'll see a rise in is connected TV. Obviously the pandemic helped to mature this particular channel, but I think we're going to it still is very fragmented, and there's still a lot of growth that needs to happen in that area. So I predict that we will see a couple of changes within that space. First of all, I think we're going to see a standardization when it comes to measurement for that fragmented ecosystem. And I also think, you guys have been talking a lot about different creatives. I think we're going to see some really innovative, shoppable type ads on connected TV. And so when you think about it, we all just had the Super Bowl last month, and there are a few shoppable QR code type ads that were interesting and new, but I think that it's going to go even further this year, and people are going to start testing different types of shoppable units. And ways to drive users down that path of purchase through that, streaming environment. Along the same lines, I also think that influencer marketing is going to continue to explode. Think about it, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, but we have all of those influencers on there that are having a huge impact, on users and specifically probably millennials. But regardless of that, I think we're going to see budgets continue to shift, and having these celebrity stars, whatever you want to call them, having them plug different brands, I think will continue to grow and be really interesting to watch how those companies, fit into these platforms.
Absolutely. Man, the QR code, what a comeback, huh?
Yeah, right. I know.
Comeback kid. Perfect. Well, we had a couple questions come in. One of them actually is for Maria. They are curious if the Remerge podcast is available to the public, and if so, they want to know the name and platform so they can listen in.
Yes, absolutely. So the Remerge podcast is called Activate. We release episodes weekly, 3 different themes, one being kind of our regular segment, just talking about mobile growth marketing. We have another segment called Activate This around data analytics. And then the third segment is Women in Mobile, which I mentioned earlier. But you can find it on anywhere you would download your podcast, Spotify, Apple, available everywhere. And it's got, thank you for including that. But yeah, episodes, we just released an episode actually today, so check it out.
Cool. That's awesome. So we have about 5 minutes left. And another question we got was, what do you think is the best part of being a woman in the tech industry? Who wants to jump in and snag that one?
I'd love to start, and I'd
Go
love
for
to
it.
hear from everyone else too. I love working with women in this industry because what I've found is there's such a sense of leading with empathy when working with other women, and that can be through client services or, you know, whatever role you're at, but just generally speaking in this human-centric way, because women, and this is a generalization naturally, but women have a lot on our plates. We like to take a lot on our plates, even though we sometimes shouldn't put a lot on our plate. So there is this level of leading with empathy and understanding, you know, that we have all of these different things going on and we are here for our other women. And I think this panel is such a beautiful testament to it, where we're all here celebrating each other, celebrating all of the things that we've done, even though we all come from different places, we all have different things on our plates, but we're recognizing that we've all come to this same industry in multiple different ways. And we have this, you know, celebratory aspect and just empathetic, sympathetic nature to wanting to see everyone succeed. So that's one of my favorite things about working with fellow female colleagues in this industry is we're all marching in the right direction, but we all recognize that we had our own journey to get there, and no judgment, just excitement on that, you know?
Definitely.
You know, for me, I think I was always a nerd at heart. I love real-time strategy games like Age of Empires and Age of Empathy. And I feel like that this is like the ultimate place to be creative and scientific. It's a great marriage of that. I also feel like tech has been opened up in probably the last, let's say, decade or so, where being a woman in tech is not as foreign as it was. And so I feel like we're in a good place. Before, I think it would have been a lot harder. I think that there's been a lot of progress here, and we also have an opportunity to be a voice for people who are coming out behind us. So I think that there's a lot of responsibility that we have being women here in leadership, but I think we can do it. So I'm excited about that. Another reason I think it's great to be a woman in tech, you know, I think that the empathy really speaks to me. And there's also the sense of we can reinforce different types of values, you know, whether it's really speaking for folks who don't have a voice, or it's bringing up topics that might be a little difficult or outside of the work world and bringing them in, because work and life are really the same thing. Like this is what we do, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's been a beautiful thing I've seen modeled from a lot of women in tech, and men too, but like I think that that's something unique we can continue to reinforce.
Definitely. Lucy, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple common themes that are being echoed here, but I think for me, you know, being a woman in MarTech is really the supportive community, both from other females as well as from males. And, you know, being able to, for those of us that have been in the MarTech space for quite some time, being the pioneers, you know, and being the women to be able to take the lead and have a seat at the table. And you're right in that it is a newer industry than some of the others, but I think that really opens up for a lot of opportunity for us. And also, you know, sort of what I've been touching on, it's ever evolving. And so, you know, I think we're going to the one thing I like about it is, we're going to continue to have a seat at the table. We're going to continue to be on more of these types of calls where it's all women and everyone sharing their ideas. And that really is at the forefront for many of the companies in the ecosystem.
Definitely. Maria, you want to take us home?
Yeah. I mean, I think just to like echo everyone here, there's the fact that it is ever evolving just opens a door for so many opportunities. And you have to just be, willing to say yes to anything within your means, of course, but kind of never say no to an opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome, guys. And thank you so much for joining me today. This was super fun being with all of you. Very insightful stuff. I am so honored to be a part of this lovely and very smart and distinguished crew. So thank you guys so much. And thank you everyone who joined us today. We will send the recording out and hope everyone has a great rest of their week.
Thanks, team. That was great.
Everybody.
Bye.
Let's do it again.
Go.